Cool. So yeah, I mean, it seemed like a pretty interesting list of topics you sent over. I mean, I was looking at it. Now, have you kind of? I don't seem to have a Google Docs link. Did you set up kind of anything beyond what you emailed me? Like, have you fleshed out any kind of outline or anything? Because I don't seem to see anything like that right now.
No, I didn't. Let me just pull it up really fast. So the first one I sent you was basically just a refresh. I think we had done in 2018 at some point there was a surprising digital marketing stats every hotel marketer should know. That was a pretty easy one, a pretty light and fluffy one.
Right.
I figured you could just you could go through that one, take a peek at what we did, and then kind of build a new one, kind of similarly structured, just with an updated kind of list of fresh kind of stats and maybe some kind of thoughts. And that one, what I liked about that one is it kind of broke it out by, what the fuck? I got the guys updating the blog, and so I keep finding broken shit, and so the link I sent you is not turning up. Let me just see.
Yeah, I meant to tell you yesterday actually that the one of those articles we were going to reference in the budgeting one, the lessons from Game of Thrones. I was getting a broken link on that one too.
Okay. Yeah, they're migrating the blog over to to be in sync with the website, so there aren't two different systems. Like, we basically had a WordPress blog that was skinned to look like the site, but wasn't actually a part of the site, and it was a part of our CMS, so they had to go back and basically rebuild it to be part of the CMS, and so they're migrating that, and I think it's just all over the place here.
Yeah.
If I can find it here. It's weird that it's not coming up. It shouldn't have. The URL structure did not change, so I'm not really sure why it's not coming up. All right, so I'll dig that out for you. But essentially,
don't worry about it.
Essentially, what that one is, that should be a really simple one. I believe it's broken out. I can't remember exactly how it's broken out now, but he broke it out by types of stats, so he kind of clustered them to be a little more organized.
Right.
So if you want to continue that idea and cluster them, we can just open that up to I think the title was 20 surprising digital marketing stats every hotel should care about or should know about. Basically, just rebuild that just using fresh new 2019 stats, and that should be an easy one to kind of model.
Okay.
And of course, just if you use the similar stats, it's not a big deal. But just make sure to fresh so there's no kind of dupe content.
Right.
So. But other than that, you can kind of, if there's stats that are similar or relevant, that's fine.
Right.
The next one, the 4 Ps of marketing one, I might try to outline that better for you before.
Okay.
And so maybe we'll skip that one now, and I'll give you the detail on the content life cycle one.
Okay.
I'll give you two easy ones to kind of burn through, and I'll try to outline the 4 Ps because I'm still slowly. I had more ideas on that one, so that'll be a slightly larger one. So on the content life cycle, I think what I'd kind of like to do is introduce it in kind of this way, which is, the current and kind of what we were just talking about is, hotels and probably marketers in general have this. We're kind of battling this war of this word content. How much content do we need? How much content do we need on a daily basis? How much? How do I produce this content? Then once I produce it, what do I do with it? But more importantly, I think there's this feeling that they have to produce content frequently, and I think social media has put that burden on every business, including hotels, to feel like they need fresh photography every day for a social media post. They need a new photo every single day, right? And in the past, when a marketer or a agency was going to produce a piece of content, like a print ad, they would labor over that for a month. They would come up with a concept. They would go take a piece of art, right? They would have their copywriters and creative directors all in a room, and they would labor over that one image and that line of copy. And then they would pay to put it in the magazine, and that would be a big, have a price tag on it. And nobody let that thing go out without everyone in agreement and approving it and all that stuff. And now there's this expectation that every day you need to post something and it needs to be good, right? And that's like, that model just doesn't make sense, especially for hotels who do not have a budget they're not Coca-Cola. They don't have a budget to produce an awesome piece of art and an awesome line of copy every single day. There's not enough talent in the world to support that. And there's not a budget large enough to support that. So hoteliers need to, that's fundamentally flawed, and hoteliers need to stop thinking about content as this sort of never, like that they need, I don't really know the best way to phrase that yet, but they need to stop thinking that content is something they need a ton of. They don't need 360 days worth of content. They need one really good piece of content, and they need to strategically deploy it. So, for me, kind of the headline on that can be, if we want to kind of bat around headline ideas, it's hotels have been approaching content all wrong, right? So that kind of that background, what we just talked about, could maybe be kind of filler for your introduction. And then, as we kind of go down the bullets, number one, how much content does a hotel actually need? Let's just tackle that, right? Let's talk about what your goals are as a hotel, right? Are you looking to convince travelers who have decided to come to your destination or your hotel that you're the right hotel for them, right? That's where that awesome piece of content for your rooftop bar or an awesome piece of content for your restaurant comes into play, right? You don't need to publish that to, well, I guess maybe I'll take that one step back. Let's look at the funnel first, and I can send you. We're reworking a funnel, so I'll kind of send that to you. But essentially, what we're actually talking about is, hotels aren't obligated to convince people with their content that they are the reason they should travel to San Diego, right? That's never going to happen. what hotels need to do is once a traveler has decided they're coming to San Diego, that they're the right hotel to stay at in San Diego, right? And so when we think about that, when we go, okay, our job is to convince the people who are deciding which hotel to stay at once they've decided on San Diego are the people we care about, and the people who are searching our brand to compare us to other hotels are the people we care about. So really what we're talking about is mid-funnel and bottom-funnel tactics, right? We don't care about your fans, right, who have never booked a hotel or have never booked a stay at your hotel or have booked in the past and are staying in touch. We only care about the people who are deciding to stay at your hotel right now. The only people that matter are the people searching your property right now. And so when we think about our approach to content, right, we need that kind of gives us clarity. It's not just, we just don't need content to be out there forever just in case. We need content to persuade the people at the point of decision. That's what our content's designed to do. Our content, we need to stop confusing top-of-funnel marketing, right, with what hotels are there to do. Top-of-funnel marketing, convincing customers to go to San Diego, that's a job for the tourism board. That's not a job for the hotel. So if a hotel's job is only to get people to choose their hotel once a client is in the decision-making phase, whether they're at the point of intent, they know the destination, or they're at the point of search, they're searching the brand, that is all the research phase. We need to convince them. So if that's our purpose for the content, well, all you really need is one solid piece of content, right? Because that's a revolving door of users. It's not the same user over and over and over and over again. Those are all new people coming down the pike, right? So if that's the case, really we need to invest in one solid piece of content and strategically deploy it.
Right.
Now, how do we strategically deploy it, right? What are the strategies we have to strategically deploy? Well, number one, where are you serving your content? Are we talking about it's hosted on the website and we're driving traffic to it? Are we talking about is the content actually a video? Is the content a series of incredible images? Right? All that could be content, right? A blog, a video, a series of images. Right. Whatever that style of content is, how are we delivering it to the consumer, right? And how are we doing it in an interesting way? So content could be, if somebody just sees it, right, that's effective. If somebody visits the page, that's effective. If somebody watches our video, that's effective. So the content doesn't necessarily have to live on the site to be impactful, right? So once we've established, okay, the mechanism, how we're going to distribute the content is all going to depend on the type of content it is, right? We're again getting a little more tactical. I'm sorry if that's a little out of the narrative, but I'm going to just go back for a second. So
sure.
So we're on tactics for distributing. How are we distributing that content in a meaningful way? So let's look at two ways we can distribute meaningful content. Number one, easy, retargeting, right? People who are actually at the point of decision choosing your property, they've been to your website, they've been to your social channels, they're researching you, They've watched one of your videos already, maybe. That's who we want to hit with our content.
Right. Right.
So when we think about that, after 30 days, people are making their decision to go to your hotel. That booking window is about 30 days. After they've either made the decision or not, stop serving that person a piece of content, right? That piece of content. The next 30-day window, people pop in. So it's a revolving door. That's what we would call evergreen content.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then you've got that same model at the intent phase, right? Our ability to distribute content to users who haven't chosen a hotel but have chosen a destination. If you want to reference, you can read our article on intent, and you can link to that. But essentially, we can use that same strategy, that same evergreen strategy. Let's deploy that video that showcases your incredible rooftop view of the park, right? That everyone, when they see it, wants to stay at your property. Let's show that to everyone who is actually thinking about coming to your destination. Not everyone in the world, right, which is an impossible budget. Let's show it just to those people who are thinking about coming to your destination. That gives us clarity, and it's very similar. It's one step up from remarketing, right? It's not people who are actually thinking about staying at your property. It's actually people who are thinking about staying at the destination. We're going one level up, but your content couldn't be used for a better purpose, right? Once again, that's a revolving door of users. We don't need to refresh that content until those users have seen it multiple times. Right. So if we're like how we're, the two audiences, maybe that could be, the first part of that was, I can't remember how we structured the first one, was that just principle of we're kind of doing content wrong. We don't need to do it, a bunch. As long as we have a really good piece of content, we just need to strategically deploy it. Well, from there, who are the two audiences that give a shit about your content, right? It's the people who are thinking about staying in your property and the people who are thinking about coming to your destination, right? So once we've identified them, we have our audiences. Now the question is, how do I know when a piece of content, it needs to be refreshed? Well, in the past, right, television told us, hey, someone doesn't know you exist until they've seen your messaging, 5 to 10 times, something like that. You can double check that stat, but there was like a frequency stat for television. You need to serve it. Like, they don't have any recall until they've seen it 5 or 6 times, or something like that. So we can use that same model for users who have never heard of your property. They're in the intent phase. Why are we going to serve it to them one time? They might have just passed it, right? They might not have clicked on it because they weren't paying attention, right? Let's show it to them 4 or 5 times, and when they've seen it 4 or 5 times, then we know we can refresh that piece of content, right? Holding ourselves to kind of the same standards as traditional advertising did. We don't have to just refresh that content after someone's seen it one time, because they may not have been catching it. So we have this idea of frequency, reach and frequency. So how do we identify reach and frequency? Well, number one, the Facebook and Instagram platform are incredible at this, right? They actually give us those kind of stats where we can identify how many individual users saw my content and how many times on average they've seen it. This gives us, total clarity to the lifespan of a piece of content. And so maybe if your audience pool is massive, right, it's going to take you a long time to serve that content with any level of frequency. So that piece of content is good for a very, very long time. If your audience pool is really small, right, then you may want to look at increasing the amount of content you have so that you can constantly keep a piece of refreshed content out there. So that's how we decide. So when we're looking at things like, that's why the value of the retargeting and the intent is it's a revolving door. So that kind of gives you that clarity that confidence that you can leave it there for a long period of time. But then you can actually check to see what your average frequency is to see if it's getting stale.
Right.
On top of that, so we've covered basically the concept of building the correct piece of content, the two audiences who care about your content, how you know when your content's old, and then on top of that, okay, great. You're ready to rebuild your content. You're ready to refresh your content, right? Great. Now, the question is, are you remarketing to all the people who you've built that relationship with already? Are you creating a new layer, or are you starting over, right? So for me, when you're going to build that second piece of content, if you've done it right, you've actually already created a bunch of audiences of people who have seen that first piece of content, right? So you actually have the ability, if you wanted to now layer on a second piece of content to those same people who already saw your first piece of content. Or you can go back to the drawing board and target new people, right? Or people you have no idea if they've seen your content before. So you can make those decisions as well. So for instance, if you're distributing content correctly, right, you're building your own audiences of people in the last 360 days who have watched one of your videos, people in the last 180 days who have been to your website, right? People who have in the last 360 days who have clicked on a piece of content on social media, right? You actually have these massive audiences of users who have engaged with your content in the past. So now what you have when you produce that second piece of content is you've got essentially an audience of people who have already raised their hand and said, I like your content. I've engaged with your content. So now you've created this third audience, right? Now you have your remarketing, your intent, and now this wonderful third audience of people who are familiar with your property. And so now when you distribute that content, you've got a new layer to add to the story. And you've got a new reason to engage with the people that you've already engaged with. So that second piece, that first piece, hypothetically, is still an evergreen piece of content for retargeting intent, but that new piece of content is a new layer for that audience you've built who have already seen something. How are we doing so far?
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome stuff, man. Yeah, and it makes very good sense. Yeah, I mean, so I guess the question is that where do you go from there? I mean, have we addressed all of the kind of core questions that come with the argument that we're making about frequency? I mean, is there something else that you think detail-wise we need to flesh out, with specifics?
Yeah, I think I might try to work in a couple of charts. One of the things I think, specifically, in order to produce content, we talked about the two types of audiences we care about. The reason people are producing the wrong content and distributing and have a wrong approach to content is because they just don't know who the people who care about their content is, who they are, and they don't know how to access them, and they don't know how the mechanism works to distribute the content. There's just tons of confusion there. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to shine a light on how hoteliers should be approaching content. And what it requires is that they understand the consumer journey, right, intimately, and that they build content to impact the consumer journey.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of a fundamental thing. Like it all returns to the consumer. Everything goes back to the consumer journey, right? Once we understand that, it all makes sense. So, okay, consumer journey, people start at the intent phase. They know the destination they want to travel to. Great. Now we can find strategies of accessing those people. When they're at the bottom funnel and they're searching your brand, great. Now we can find ways of accessing those people. So I think kind of breaking it out, that kind of question answer is, okay, I've identified the person I want to impact. Now let me build that piece of content for those people, right?
Right.
And I think that's probably a section we might have missed. But I think that's the fundamental thing is I think hotels just think of content out of context. There's just this, I need content. I'm gonna go produce a 30-second spot, and that's I don't know where I'm gonna put that. I'm gonna hire this company to come do all this social media photography so that I can post to 12 people every day this beautiful content. And those strategies are just wrong-minded. Those strategies are I'm gonna go spend all this money to do a lot of work with the least possible results. So that's kind of where we're at. So maybe maybe I'll work on, now that I've kind of articulated to you, you have a lot of fodder. Maybe I'll kind of go through and I'll think about kind of outlining that really fast for you. After I get off the call, I'll send that over. Just to kind of help organize it, because that was good for me to kind of just talk it through. That should give you plenty to fill it in. But maybe I'll just help outline it really fast.
Definitely. And this is a great topic. I mean, I think this is something that is really going to be useful to people, and I just think it's a great idea. I mean, I follow what you're saying 100%, and I think that you're right. I mean, it's completely wrong to go about it the way that you were describing. So many people go about doing it. I mean, even if it's just like you said, posting all the time to just people that are following your page already. Really, what's the point of that unless those people are planning on coming to your destination in the next few months? I mean, really, what does it matter? I mean, it's sort of this of course it reinforces long-term branding and long-term visibility in the market. But I mean, it's not like people are at that decision where they're trying to make a booking or decide where they're going to stay. So I think it's a really useful topic. I mean, I guess another question that I had is that this basically throws out kind of any hard and fast rule about timeline or frequency of posting, right? I mean, it's really based upon, like you said, this revolving door and this evergreen content, right? So it's more about kind of putting those pieces in place and then just following the metrics on them.
Yeah. We're not allowed to say it directly to a client, but we really don't believe in organic social as a ongoing effort. What we actually, and I'll show you. I think you might have done an article on it in the past. Maybe it was you, maybe it wasn't. But that concept of building a kind of preparing your Instagram grid with beautiful content, and then just leaving it there for people who are actually in the decision-making phase who are searching. Having a beautiful designed grid that showcases your property is more impactful than dripping out a lame piece of content every single day, right? Because you're strategically prepared for that person who's going to base their decision to stay with you on your Instagram feed, right? So that to me is actually more in line with what we're talking about. Yeah.
So I mean, maybe this is could be even sort of a separate topic or for the future. I'm not really sure yet, but I mean, maybe we want to talk about how that changes the workflow. I mean, because it's like if you're operating under this premise that you have to kind of keep cranking out this daily content or however many posts per week you think is your mandate, like obviously that kind of creates a certain schedule and a certain workflow for producing that content. Whereas like if you're taking this approach, maybe you can build those kind of like 3 or 4 or 5 core pieces of content all at once, and then you don't have to focus so much on the production aspect of it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole point in itself. What you're making is this concept of and maybe that could be a part 2 if we wanted to break it off as its own thing, is because I do believe that's important too, where we're basically saying, hey, if you're going to produce content now, you need to start thinking about producing content across the scope of your hotel, and here's how you should be thinking about that, because that's actually something we're looking at, because basically hotels come to us, they want an architectural shoot, but they only have they want to do a video, they want an architectural shoot, but they only have $8,000 a year maybe to dedicate to something like that. And they need to stop thinking about it like an $8,000 budget per year, and they need to think about it for $8,000 times 5 years to produce content across their whole hotel, because that's good for about 5 years. Like they need to think about what they're actually getting and how long that's going to be valuable to them. So maybe that could be a part 2 to this, is we can look at like producing content, how you should be thinking about producing the content.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, like I said, once you sort of throw this like daily, weekly mandate out the window, it's sort of like you're entering this new territory where it's like, okay, so we're doing it differently now. Like, how are we going to execute it? So that's cool.
And I really think the fundamental kind of concept for me is, it just goes back to like basic marketing, right? I've been able to identify an audience, just like, okay, if you're placing an ad in Travel Weekly, you're identifying hypothetically an audience of travelers, people interested in travel, and so your marketing message is going to be specific to that audience, right? Like you're not going to say something that isn't specific to that audience. That's why you chose that magazine. That's why you're in there, right? And so for me, this idea of like social has always been, well, no, we're talking to everybody, right? And that's not true. That is not true at all. You're not talking to everybody. If you're smart, you're talking to a very particular audience and you have a very particular message. And so that it just takes us back to the fundamentals of marketing, right? We have an audience. We're going to customize a message for our audience. And again, we're really warring against this concept that like hotels believe that they, by putting their message in front of an absolute stranger, that they're going to somehow impact them to come stay at their hotel, right? And that's not the case. They're only going to impact somebody who's so far down the funnel already that they just want to figure out, and what are they basing their stay on? Is it a cool location, and is it cheap? Like that's basically what they're basing it on. So, kind of just returning to that, like, let's be real. Let's be real. Consumers are super selfish, right? They're very selfish. We're not gonna sway them unless we're strategic about it. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, there is obviously some degree of brand loyalty, but I mean, people aren't going to take like they're not going to pay like a super duper premium just so that they can stay with their favorite brand. I mean, it's not going to happen. Yeah. Gotcha. Cool. All right. This is great. Yeah, this is a good article here in the works, and yeah, I'll definitely dig in on that. I think in the meantime too, with the stat one, I know it's tricky because we don't have the web page up in front of us, but I guess something maybe to think about is if there's anything on that list that you think stat-wise is kind of outdated, that doesn't really have the relevance anymore, and if there's anything that you think that maybe we should replace it with stat-wise that's, kind of hasn't been there in the past,
Once I track it down, I'll refresh it. I'll go through it one more time, and I'll send you some notes on that as well. So expect an outline from me here. And then you can fill it in with what we talked about, and then I'll send you that stat. And then the 4 Ps one, let me think through that one again, because I had some additional data this week that I feel like will impact that, and then we'll return to that one.
Perfect. All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
All right. Talk to you soon, Thomas. Have a good weekend.
All right. You too.
Bye.